Hey everyone, it's Paige and welcome back to my YouTube channel. I'm very excited about today's video because we are talking all things wedges. I went through a wedge fitting at Club Champion because I was in desperate need for a new set of wedges. I have been playing my PXG wedges for the longest time and unfortunately the grooves are shot. So I had to move on and I'm really excited that I did because I got to try all the new brands, all the new technology. My club fitter Eric explained the bounce, the different club faces, and really everything, and it was so much fun to go through that process with him because yes, you can always learn more, and that is why I love going to Club Champion because I learn something new every single time that I'm in there. And again, when I'm talking about the wedges that I ended up deciding to go with, I want to make it clear that you guys need to go get fit for yourself because what I say that I like might be something different than what you guys like. And especially when it comes to wedges, they're so personal. It's almost like a putter where people just like certain things. Maybe you like a softer feel, or maybe you like a feel where the ball shoots off more, or you like a little bit more workability or no workability. It really is just how you feel most comfortable around the greens. And I think everyone needs to have a really open mind when it comes to their wedges, and also an open mind and honesty when it comes to their playing ability, because that will also really help you determine what wedges are great for you. So as you know, I've had my PXG wedges for the longest time and they were my babies. They're my favorite clubs in my bag, especially my 54. I use that club around the greens, everywhere, every single shot, but the grooves are done. I couldn't use them anymore. So I went with a different brand this time, but I tried all different brands when I was at Club Champion. I tried the Callaway wedges, the Mizuno wedges, the TaylorMade wedges, the Titelist Vokey wedges, and each one had a very distinct feel. When we talked about the Mizuno, I really like the look of them. I like the different colors. They have one that has a blue finish on it, which is very sharp. And if you are a higher handicap and you don't really have that much time to practice, they have this game performance wedge that was incredible. Sometimes the game performance wedges don't look all that great. They're a bit clunky, and again, you can tell that it's a game performance wedge. This one was a little bit more sleek, you can still tell, but it was really nice. I was surprised when I hit a couple shots with it, how solid it felt and how easy it was to make contact. And you know, sometimes it's a little hard to tell when you're hitting inside a fitting bay, but I wasn't hitting any of them fat, and even when I missed it just slightly, you could see that it was flying perfectly. So again, if you struggle around the greens, and this is where the honesty comes in, you need to evaluate your game and say, okay, I really struggle with my wedge shots around the greens, especially off of tight lies, bunker shots. A game performance wedge is going to be where you want to look at first. Next, we have the Vokeys. I feel like when you think wedges, you think Vokey, and everyone wants to hit Vokeys. But here's the here's the deal. You have to be a really great player to get as much as you can out of your Vokeys. I love them because I tend to work my hands through the ball, and so the Vokeys had incredible workability. I could hit it high, I could hit it low, I could hit draws with it, I could hit fades with it, and it's great. But when I mishit it, I mishit it, and you could really feel the difference when you did mishit it compared to, say, the Callaway, where when I mishit it, it still kind of went the same distance as my other ones. When I mishit the Vokey, it was pretty short and I would have missed the green. And so again, if you are very confident around the greens, you like to work shots and move your hands, and really you're reactive to the feel of the ball coming off, and that's how you learn, then the Vokeys are perfect for you. If you are a higher handicap, I would recommend the Callaways or the Mizuno Game Performance. The game enhancing wedges are going to be for you because you could be in a bunker and yeah, you might have a Vokey in your hand, but if you can't get it out on the first try and you keep whacking at the sand over and over again, then there's no point in having a Vokey. So I went with the TaylorMade wedges. For me, it was a good combination between what I liked with Callaway having a bit of a softer feel, but the workability of the Vokey, and that's where TaylorMade kind of was a combination of both of them, and that's why I decided to go with them. I also love the face, how you can see looks a little bit different, but that's really going to help me spin the ball and control it in a way that maybe my PXGs wasn't allowing me to do so anymore because the grooves were shot. So now I can hit really spinny shots that I need, and I'm excited to have some fresh grooves. They just look really sleek to me as well. When I'm looking down at something, that's really important to me. I'm not really particular when it comes to what a club looks like with my irons, woods, driver, even putter, but there's something about a wedge for me. If it looks off in any way, I can't play it. So that is why I don't tend to play a high toe. A high toe is...
All right, so here we got kind of your high toe options here. And with these, with TaylorMade, you got two different ones. So on your lower or your higher lofts, I should say, 60, 56, 58, so on, are going to have the grooves kind of all the way out to the toe. And then you have the high toe feature, which gives you a lot of room to kind of ride up and down the face and still get a lot of spin and a lot of bite out the wedge. On the 50-degree...
Well, I just want to mention that that was not me. I did not hit that shot. Just want to put that out there. Continue.
With the 50-degree, you got some here, but it's not quite all the way out to the toe on the grooves, but it does have the high toe feature, which still gives you a little bit more room for error, if you will. So yeah, all in all, the high toes are doing really, really well, but it has to do a lot with just being able to open the club face up, be able to kind of put it down like a pancake or a frying pan and slide right up under it.
Is high toe more of a preference?
I think so. It's definitely a unique look, right?
Yeah.
And you know, when it comes down to it, I think a lot of the times when it comes to wedges, if you're not comfortable with the look of it, you definitely need to address that and figure out that first, right? Because it has to look good to you before you have confidence.
So it just gives you more room to work with.
Correct. Yep.
Perfect.
Yep. All right, so the Ping I2 is kind of another one in the high toe kind of range, and really and truly, pretty much all the high toes that have been made have been based on this club, and they used to have this club back in the early 80s, mid 80s was a big time thing, and then Phil was using this probably all the way up to maybe 10 years ago, I guess you could say, but really kind of a unique wedge and just kind of how it lines up, and you got a lot of room kind of for error on the top part of the club there.
For me, I don't like the look of that, and so even though that is good for, you know, miss hits and more consistency, I just can't do it with the way that it looks. So the degrees that I went with is a 48, a 54, and my 58. I tend to hit my 54 the most, but we'll see how I like the 58. I went with a 48 instead of having my gap wedge, so I took my Mizuno gap wedge out of my bag and I went with a 48 instead. I tend to like my 48 to match my wedges compared to matching my iron set. Has a bit of a more sleek look, and for me that's really important around the greens. Like I was saying earlier, I don't mind when my irons look a little bit thicker and clunkier, but I like my wedges to be really sleek, and especially around the greens when it's a really tight lie, I just feel like I can control it so much better, and I chip better when it resembles more of a to match my wedges compared to when it matches my iron set. When people are thinking about their wedges and how they want to gap them out, what do you recommend? Because I have been all over the place with the different wedges that I play throughout my career. I've had 60s, I've had 58s, 56s, 54s, and they've always changed.
I think it really kind of goes back to the application, right? I mean, if you're more kind of using that 50, 54 for a full swing, or 52, 56 for full swings, then you really kind of base it on just kind of where your gaps are on your pitching wedge, right? So pitching wedge, say it's 46, 47 degrees, obviously you're probably going to want to get into, 50, 51, that way you can keep your gapping a little bit more consistent. But then again, it's really hard to say just because you want to make sure that, people deliver wedges different. It's just, so you coming back in and doing a gapping session is always a big thing, so.
And what would a gapping session be?
Just come in and basically we just run through all the clubs, adjust them, and pretty much just try to get everything to overlap, right? So if we're hitting the pitching wedge, 100 yards or 110 yards and our gap wedge isn't quite getting to, 90 or 95, then we need to make sure that we kind of bump that up a couple degrees so you can get that extra yardage, regardless of what the actual sequence is. We're just trying to hit numbers, so that's really what we look for. Majority of your sets these days are really going to be probably a little bit more towards that 50, 54, 58 setup. But then again, I think it gets into the player preference a little bit more. I mean, I play a 50, 54, and then I jump to 60 just because it's just like a head thing, right? I see a 60 versus a 58, something's there, so yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about bounce. So I went with a 11-degree bounce. And I mean, you guys gotta see, they wrote Nico on it. Some hearts too, which is so, so, so cute. And then we went with 8-degree of bounce on my 58. So you can see the difference in the way that the grind is by how the bounce is different. We tried a couple different bounces, and this is the one that just felt the most comfortable to me. Eric explains the bounce situation so much better than I ever could. So when it comes to bounce, because I know a lot of people have questions about what it is and what you should do with it.
Right.
Is there, like, if you're a higher handicap, do you tend to be a certain type of bounce compared to low, or does it all come down to how you attack the ball?
I think probably a little bit of both. I think if it comes down to where you're not as much of a solid ball striker, that kind of thing, some of the bigger clubs out there, like your Mizuno ES21 is going to be kind of a little bit more forgiving. So with that being said, I mean, the bounce is a little bit higher on this. But nothing real crazy. So
when we're comparing these two, where's the bounce? I don't even know if people even know where the bounce
is really going to be on the back part of the club here.
Okay.
So when you set the club down on a flat surface, you got to kind of imagine the line of the ground right there, and then this angle going up, and it's kind of sitting back here. So the higher the bounce, obviously the higher this angle here is going to be. And like with you, this one here doesn't really have a ton of bounce back here, so it's really kind of sitting pretty
right
flat. There. And you can see they've kind of beveled that down a little bit right there, but that's just kind of where, you know, this is more of a precise or precision type wedge, where this is going to be more of your kind of forgiving, easier to hit kind of wedge, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. What we have here is both the Mizuno ES21 5610 and then the ES21 5614, and there's 4 degrees of bounce difference here, but you can also really see it on the 14 versus the 10 and kind of how much more that is. And you know, this is going to be good for softer conditions, fluffier sand, you know, dig, if you will, and this is going to be a little bit better for your firmer conditions, firm sand, that kind of thing.
Bounce just comes down to how you like to come into the ball, and also if you are a better player or a higher handicap, that also is going to affect the bounce as well. After you get your wedges, it's really important to hit them outside and see how they react outside. When you go through a wedge fitting at Club Champion, it's great because of the setup that they have with the screens, but you also need to see how it feels going through the grass and if it's the same. I like doing the fittings at Club Champion because it's such a tight lie, so if you can hit it off of that, you can really sense impact, but seeing them how they react on real grass is also really important. So this is the first shot I'm hitting with my new wedges, and let's see if I like them. Grip is the same, shaft is the same, pretty much identical setup to everything I've had before. It's just a new head. Oof. I hit that one right in the center, and it spun. I haven't seen a shot spin in a while because my grooves were so done with my old wedges. They feel exactly the same as they did at Club Champion, where they have that kind of in-between feel I was talking about, where I'm able to still work the ball, but it feels a little bit softer off the face. And I like that. The spin is something that I'm really noticing right away, and I think it has to do with the groove design that they have on this club face. I can just feel it literally going up my club and spinning as soon as it comes off. And before, I was having to adjust how far I was landing it based off of my grooves because I knew they weren't spinning, and so I was having to land it shorter and shorter, and now I can actually just hit the shot that I want to hit instead of trying to manipulate where I need to land it. So that one I mishit, and it ended up just as good as the perfect shots that I hit before. So I'm really loving these clubs, really loving them. Oh, they just feel so good when they come off the face. Again, the biggest thing for me is the spin. The spin on this is insane. So as you can see, it's a pretty nice scatter for, what is that, about a 35 yard shot. I'm gonna go out on the golf course now and hit some really difficult shots and see how the new wedges are reacting on the golf course. So the first kind of difficult shot I'm going to try with the new clubs is a very tight lie. Everyone seems to struggle on tight lies. You have to clip them absolutely perfectly for you to get that spin and exactly how you want to hit it. People tend to hit a little fat because they get nervous and they stick it in the ground, or they'll hit it too thin because they don't want to hit it fat, and so they'll just kind of lift up on it. Even for me, I would say tight lies are the most difficult shot, especially let's say the ground is a little wet. That's when you tend to dig a little bit more, or when it's really hard pan, you tend to bounce off of it. And this is more on the hard side since it's a Arizona summer. Everything is dried out. So we're gonna see how the new 54 feels on a very tight lie. Really nice so far. I don't feel like I have to manipulate it in any way, which is really important. Yeah, another good shot. Really consistent with how they were reacting and how I was catching them through impact. Okay, so now we're going to show a different angle so you can see how they were reacting. The greens are aerated here, which is very normal. You have to do that. So it might not be as consistent as it normally would with the reaction of how it's hitting, depending if it hits, you know, more of a pocket of sand or one of the aeration holes. But still, I want to show you guys how quick it's kind of catching and spinning, and that comes down to just having new grooves. That was a really good example because I actually hit that pretty fat and not great at all. So they are a bit forgiving, which is great. We all love that. Yeah, really good. It's catching the way exactly I want it to. Yep. You can see when it hits the first bounce, it kind of spins and checks up and then rolls out, and that's exactly what I'm looking for this shot. The next difficult shot I'm going to try out is a flop shot off of a kind of fluffy lie. There's not much rough here, so I can't really test out the rough theory yet, but it is a downhill green from where it's going to be landing. It's sloping downhill, so I'm really going to have to put a lot of spin on this shot. I'm not going to do my full big flop shot, the one that I only do basically just for show. I'm going to hit the flop shot I would hit in tournaments, competition, whenever it matters. And so my normal big for show flop shot is where I really open it up, get as deep as I can, and it's a full swing. It's fun to look at, it's fun to hit, not very consistent. So what I do is make my stance just a little bit closer in, really open the face though, and I just really focus on throwing my hands, but I'm only bringing it not that high. I don't really need to do that much work on it. Ooh, really nice. It bounced a little bit, and I think that's just because of the lie. There's nothing wrong with the club, but it felt really good through impact and really easy to hit this shot. No effort. Yeah, that was even better. Real good. It's a really difficult shot, and I'm pulling them off really easily, and that's just the club. Like the club's reacting really well through impact, which I love. I was so against getting new clubs and new wedges because I loved my old ones so much, and I was really hesitant to even go through the process of getting them fit, but I'm so happy I did. And I'm sure a lot of you feel that way too, where you're like, well, my clubs are good enough, they're working for me enough, and I love them. But you could love them even more if you go through a fitting process and you have the new equipment and new grooves. Like the small things make such a big difference. Or even like new grips. People don't realize how fast their grips wear out, and getting new grips even makes a big difference. Good. Okay, so we can look at my pattern. For this difficult of a shot, that's a really, really good pattern. I would take that all day long, every single day. And again, you can see here, I'm hitting every single shot right in the center. I wasn't actually doing that with my PXGs, and I think this just fits me better because the loft and lie, that's another thing too. You guys need to get your loft and lie figured out and checked in, and so that's why getting your clubs fit is also really important. Just one tip that really helps with your grooves, I'm sure you probably all know this, but you grab a tee and you take it along where the groove is, and you just get that dirt and grass out of it. And that is how you keep your grooves clean and always make sure that there's nothing in there, and that's really going to help you keep that spin that you're looking for. Next, I'm going to hit the 48. I was just thinking that I only hit my 54, and I was thinking of shots that I would use my 58 for, and I can't really think of one. The only time that I've ever used my 58 in a tournament was I was playing in Scotland at the Scottish Open when I was still playing professionally, and on the 11th hole at Dundonald Links, it's a short par 3, but there's this really small bunker in the back, and they call it the Devil's Anus because it was literally hell. Once you're in there, it's impossible to get out, and that's the only time I've ever used that club. I didn't get out the first time, but it worked the second time. I think I made like a double or a triple, but I made the cut in that tournament, and I'll never forget it. But I'm going to use my 48 now. And this is the shot that I would use it for mostly, is like a bump and run. I personally don't love to hit an 8 or a 7 iron. If I'm going to hit something other than my 54, I'm going to hit my 48. And this goes back to liking the club looking more like my wedge compared to my iron set. If I'm hitting this club with something that looks more like an iron, it just looks clunky to me, and I don't like that. So I like a sleeker look for this, and it just feels more comfortable. So how I'm hitting this shot is having more of a narrow stance, not as much of a throw. It's more of a turning your hand over to make sure it's low. It's still going to check because it's a 48-degree wedge, and so when it hits, it's probably going to check a little bit, and then it's going to roll out. It's going to roll out more than my 54, obviously, because there is less loft, but it's going to react very similarly with a 7 iron, 8 iron. It doesn't really check up. It just kind of hits and rolls, and for me, I just find that a little bit inconsistent. I just know how this is going to react a little bit better. Go in. So like that, it's just really consistent for me, and I know how it's going to react, and it feels very similar to my 54. It also too, I like to have a 48 that looks like my wedges, because when I'm hitting an 80-yard shot, I feel like I get more spin with these grooves and the way that these grooves are set up compared to my irons. And again, it's just personal preference, but I like for this club to match my wedges compared to my iron set, which I've said a billion times, so I know you're probably sick of me hearing that. I think you get the point by now. So good. And the biggest test is going to be a bunker shot to see how it reacts out of the bunker. I feel like I'm a really good bunker player, and it's one thing in my game that I can always trust and rely on. My short game, really, I feel like my short game is world class, and the reason I had the success that I did when I was playing professionally had nothing to do with my ball striking, because I hit it like absolute garbage. I had the yips for that entire year, and I could only hit punch 3 woods, and they would still barely find the fairway. And my short game saved my butt 24/7. It was the one thing I could always count on, which isn't great. It was very stressful rounds of golf, but I could always get up and down from anywhere. And that's what the girls that were playing with me, they're like, you would be gone and then you get up and down, which a lot of practice. But let's see how the bunker shot is. Ooh, it feels real good. Yeah, it reacted so well out of the bunker. I almost flew it to the pin and it stopped almost on a dime. I am kicking the sand up just because there's nothing there. So I'm trying to make it feel just a little bit better of like what a normal bunker shot would feel like. Bit of a bad bounce, but you could see how nice and easy it just popped out. Felt really good off the club face. So I hope you enjoyed today's video and all of your wedge questions have been answered. But if not, leave a comment down below and I'll try to get back to you on any of your questions. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to my channel. I want to thank Club Champion for always fitting me in amazing equipment. And guys, definitely go check them out. They have locations everywhere. I will put the link down below. So that's Club Champion. You guys can get fit for anything you want. They do all of the clubs, anything you desire, all of the brands, even little boutique brands. They have everything there that you literally could ever want. It's like being a kid in a candy store. You just can try everything out. So again, thank you, Eric, for teaching all of us about bounce. I know that is definitely a topic that is very confusing sometimes, but you made it so easy to understand. And again, as always, thank you for watching my videos and supporting, and I will see you guys next Thursday.